You're listening to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, a weekly webcast and podcast brought to you by the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to participate in one of our live webcasts, please visit cfhou.com/weekly. You'll find a calendar of upcoming webcasts, as well as instructions for joining the Zoom meeting via the app or by phone. We'd love to see you. That URL again is cfhou.com/weekly. Now here's the weekly episode. Enjoy.
Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 17th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collections, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's weekly tittle, which was called Assemble or Revamp Your Toolkit. That was the least creative weekly tittle title I've ever come up with, I have to say.
You weren't pleased with that one?
The assignment is it's so literal. The assignment was to assemble your decluttering and organizing toolkit if you don't already have one, or to refresh your existing toolkit. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Who established or reviewed your toolkit this week? Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer and frequent commenter Ms. Leanite offered another tip for containing a decluttering and organizing toolkit. Ms. Leanite writes, "Thank you, Gayle and Ed. Happy Valentine's Day. Some of the tool and supply compartment tote bags meant for gardening would also be handy and lightweight for other purposes like organizing and or packing."
Those gardening bags that you're describing would really work well. They're usually really heavy duty canvas, so they can stand up on their own without slouching over. They just, the bag is constructed of that canvas in such a stiff way that it's just a container with a handle. It's very, very useful for this. They're already designed to hold the weight of tools, which they're designed for gardening tools, so they're not any heavier than whatever tools you would gather to put in the organizing kit. So those would work in the bag. They also have usually side pockets of some kind to help segment the bag. So it's really a great container solution for an organizing kit. Really appreciate the reminder, Ms. Lena. It's a good example. And actually, one of my organizer friends uses a bag like that. So as soon as I read the comment, Amy's bag popped into my head because she had a big black one that was pretty long and wide and had a really stiff handle on the top, and it worked really well. Good catch. Good reminder.
Jacqueline reports, "My friend sent out a message for donated items for a Tricky Tray fundraiser." I'm not familiar with that model. Do you understand? Do you know how that works? Okay. Let me go on with her comment. She also leads wreath making classes as a fundraiser for the local botanical garden and is always looking for artificial flowers. I gave her two bags of flowers and a bag of items for the Tricky Tray. I have also continued working on my photo sorting project. I've sorted almost 70,000 pictures and have deleted at least 10% of them.
Wow.
The rest are organized into searchable folders. There is an end in sight.
I cannot believe you've done 70,000. That's just astonishing.
Amazing.
Must have spent so many hours doing this. I'm really impressed with your dedication and focus on this. And you're going to be so relieved when you get it all the way to the end. That's amazing. Good job. Gosh, wow.
I don't
That's
think
a serious library of photos.
Yeah, I don't think I've taken or collected 70,000 photos in all my life. Although I do have, 15,000 photos of my dog.
Right? Yeah. That's the pet thing, right?
Suze reports, "I haven't yet refreshed my decluttering toolkit, but I plan to add to it and change the layout of it after your podcast."
Cool. There's always some great tips that we talked about a lot of great supplies to be added into a kit. And so give some of them a try if you haven't used them before. I think the biggest one that people overlook is the museum gel or the museum putty. There's always some important piece of art object sitting around that you would rather not be broken, and adding a gel or museum putty to it so that it stays put well is one that people don't often think about, but it's really useful if you add it in.
I don't think we had talked about that in our previous shows about a toolkit. Maybe that
Mm-hmm.
was added to your repertoire in more recent years.
Came later. That's
Yeah.
possible.
Catherine said outdoor projecting.
Ah,
Used your suggestion, reviewed what was needed, walked up the hill to project, need a hammer. So I think Catherine is saying she did not quite have everything she needed in her toolkit.
she came up with one more thing she needed.
M says, I have a plastic tote designed for household cleaning supplies. Was going to use it as a decluttering tote, but I find it awkward to carry around. I think I will declutter the tote itself and go for a bag.
Try for
Mo-
something different.
Mother just used an apron with big pockets.
That works until you have to bend over and
Oh,
then
oh,
stuff
right.
comes out of the pockets. It's good as long as you don't have to get down on the floor or you're not bending over at the waist to do something. That's the only hang up about the apron in the pockets.
May said, commenting on the previous comment about photos, May says, I won't live that long to organize my photos.
Right?
I
It's a
think
lot.
I think, a nice like greeting and way of wishing well to someone would be to say, may you live long enough to organize your photos.
That's good.
Um,
Y'all are funny.
Naomi asked if I was sure that it was 183 windows open exactly. And I was going to say no, but 83 was the number that my one of my sisters always used to use when she was exaggerating about something, and so it became my exaggerated number of choice. And I guess I just threw the 100 on in front of it to make it sound
Well,
really dramatic.
I've seen you
Yes.
with a million windows open. Like you've had to toggle through some windows before. I've seen it
Um,
happen.
Jacqueline expanded on tricky trays. She said tricky trays are gift baskets. Each has a
Oh,
raffle jar or bag. You choose what basket you want and put your raffle ticket in the bag for that prize. A winner is drawn
ah,
for each item. So it's a multiple item raffle of gift
raffle thing.
baskets.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm with you. Cool. I just hadn't heard that term before. That works totally.
Connie says this is a really interesting comment. Since I am used to doing mise en place while cooking, I have been doing similar with decluttering and tidying. Mise en place is the French term for getting all your stuff together. It means put in place, and it's, making sure that you have all your ingredients, you have all the tools you're going to need, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It's what your sous chefs and minions do when you're the main chef.
Right.
Let's see what else we have in the comments. Oh, Deborah says 11 million is the official term for a very large number.
For exaggeration purposes, 11 million works.
Right. Okay, I think we should get on with the main topic. We're going down some tangents in
I
the
just want to add one thing today,
uh
which is over the weekend, I had promised that I would be working on my garage. And so I've now spent three different like 2 hour time windows. And this past Sunday, I spent 2.5 hours in the garage. And so I have organized down one side and I've organized part of another side. And so I'm working my way around the garage and lasting as long as my knees can deal with it on the concrete before I have to surrender. But I was very satisfied with the work that I got done over the weekend. So But now when I
Excellent.
pull into the garage, I'm not quite as annoyed. There's still plenty of work to do, but I keep making big improvements. So I had committed to that to the other person who is also working on their garage right now, and so I just wanted to report. Me too. I'm doing it. It's not done yet, but I'm doing it.
Connie asked, will you have before and after pics?
Oh, I did take a couple of after pics on the side that I worked on. Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to share those. How can we make that happen? We'll have to work on that.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
let's go on to our main topic.
Okay.
How do you go about breaking down a deceased loved one's art or craft room? A creative space can be a minefield of memories, emotional challenges, and tough decisions that require a careful and thoughtful approach. Today, Gail's going to explain how to manage a late loved one's creative space and tackle other short topics suggested by our audience. I wanted to save the creative space for last so that, we can talk about that until we have to drag you off the air. So we're going to start with a different question, which came from Sandra, who asked,
Okay.
did Gail have any clients who relapsed into clutter and why?
My immediate answer is, oh God, yes. Which isn't a judgment on my part because there's several reasons why my clients experience relapse. But first, let me define what relapse means. Relapse means that there's a return to some level of a cluttered environment, even after spending hours and hours to complete a huge decluttering project. This definitely happens for a whole host of reasons. One reason is because the decluttering project does not change the underlying behavior of my clients. I can focus a client to make decisions on what to keep and what to donate. I can help them clear out a space and put systems in place for things that are being kept. I can basically reset a space to something much less dense and much more functional, but I cannot change my client's behavior in one project. If they collect things, if they don't have a process to routinely reset and clean their space, if they like to shop for entertainment or shop in high volume and keep big backstocks, if they refuse to go through the mail regularly, then they will reseed their spaces to another cluttered mess. Another reasons that clients relapse is their physical and their mental capacities. If the client have mobility issues, or they have ADHD, or they have memory impairments, then the work of being organized is often beyond them. This is not a failing on their part, it's just the reality of what they actually can do. Those with physical mobility issues have a limited ability to help themselves. The heavy lifting of rearranging a space is often too hard for someone physically, and that's why they hire an organizer to begin with, to have the physical help. And those people need our help continuously for maintenance for the same reason that they needed an organizer to dig out their spaces in the first place. They just can't do the physical part of the job anymore. If a client has ADHD or memory loss or dementia, then their brain doesn't do organizing naturally. They need to learn systems of managing their life and their homes that work with an ADHD brain and how it functions. They can learn new ways to manage things, but it takes a lot of time to develop systems of functioning that an ADHD person can use successfully, and they have to be willing to explore and learn those changes in process so they're more successful at keeping their space up. And I need to add that somebody that has memory impairment or is starting to have dementia, they're losing the executive functioning that allows them to do organizing work. And so somebody that's reached that part of their life where they're struggling with executive functioning, the process of getting organized and maintaining that organization is just no longer a skill set that they have available. And so that person is going to need help all the time. Sometimes life just throws you a curveball, and someone who's been keeping up after a decluttering project loses control of it again. Maybe their parent or spouse or child dies, and they're carrying a lot of grief. That can make functioning in a day-to-day life really hard. Maybe they lose their job or get unexpectedly divorced. That is some strong emotional turmoil to manage. Maybe somebody in the family becomes gravely ill and they require 24/7 care at home while they recover. Life often delivers experiences that go up to the front of the emotional line or to the front of the financial line even. Things happen that need our time and our energy resources more than keeping our houses straight. In any of those circumstances, having a relapse of clutter is not a shocker. It's totally understandable. And that's the time when you call the organizer back to come and help
Right?
you get a hold of it. But truthfully, somebody that's experiencing that level of I have to take care of somebody who's very ill, or I am struggling with grief, or I am struggling with loss of, of a person, of a job, of a spouse. All of those things require a lot of emotional energy, and you do have to evolve past your experience a little bit before you have any sort of resources back to do an organizing project. And so it
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me that you have to let it go for a little while before you call, because you need a little bandwidth to deal with it. And you can't always do that in the middle of a crisis. And so it doesn't surprise me when somebody calls and the first thing they say is, well, my, husband died 2 years ago and the house is out of control. Like, of course it is. That makes perfect sense to me. So it's just part of the experience. So back to my original answer, which is, oh God, yes. Clients relapse because changing behaviors takes time and energy investment, because we can't subvert physical or mental incapacities, because sometimes life is overwhelming. So that's okay. Better to have cleared it out once already and recognize it's out of control again later and ask for help again. Hopefully you ask for help sooner the next time and you learn a little more and change a little more each time until you can finally take it over yourself without support. Or you accept that it's just not your skill set and you will need this kind of support forever. I will always need a lawyer to do legal things because I don't want to learn that skill. So some of my clients will need my support forever by choice or circumstance. And that's why there's a professional organizer business to be had, because some people will need that support forever.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question. Follow-up
Mm,
question.
hmm.
Um, have you ever gone back to work for someone again and things were worse than they were the first time?
That's a good question. Yes.
Occasionally,
Yes.
infrequently, would you say? Or
Infrequently,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
okay.
I think that the more common circumstances, when somebody finally calls me, it's really, really bad. And
Yeah,
then we do a whole bunch of work and we clear it up. And then I go away and then I get a phone call later and it's starting to get bad again, but it's not
right.
as bad. Like what
Yeah,
they
yeah,
learn is to call me sooner rather than later.
yeah.
And so then it's not as hard to clean it up. It goes faster. And every time we reset it, then they call me sooner the next time.
Right.
And I do notice that behavior a lot. I have
And
had some people call me, it's gotten way worse. And usually it's because of their life circumstance, like
right.
something dramatic
Yeah,
is happening and they just have no bandwidth to look at the house at all.
yeah.
And so that's
Any good
usually
any good habits and routines you'd help them establish have fallen by the wayside in the
in the
interim.
chaos.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've seen people, I work with them over a long time and they modify their behaviors over time. Like they change some of the ways that they do things. And so people do grow and evolve, talking with me, working with me, doing the project and talking about ways to manage stuff. People learn things. They take on skills from our work together. And so it would be very unusual for the person that calls an organizer to make a major transformation in their process.
right.
But lots of people that I work with make smaller incremental changes over time that affect their ability to manage, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I can think of plenty of examples of times when you did a big project with someone and left they left something undone and then came back
Mm.
for that fine tuning at a later date.
Yeah, yeah. They ran out
Uh,
of steam before we ran out of project.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I've done that for sure.
or the thing was a less urgent, that
Hmm.
had they had a room that was a less urgent priority.
Yeah, didn't need attention right away. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
M
100%.
M asks, does the process of decluttering and organizing help a person exercise executive function? Maybe decluttering helps keep our brains young.
Mm, I could vote for that. I could see that. I mean, I think it. organizing is a chore, decluttering is a chore. And so I nobody actively hardly anybody actively tries to do that for fun or entertainment. But I think if they're paying me to be there, then we do some work and they do get the benefit of having had the conversations with me, having done the process with me. And I'm sure that that's helpful in some way
I,
that
I,
wouldn't be otherwise because they wouldn't pay attention to it otherwise.
I have no scientific support for this opinion,
Right, right. Yeah, this is
but
all out of my mouth.
what I'm going to say, I think that living in a state of constant overwhelm would certainly be inclined to have an aging effect on you. The
Mm.
stress,
It's very more stressful.
the cortisol, the just all the negative feelings and physical effects of overwhelm and anxiety age you. And so in that respect,
Hmm.
decluttering would certainly seem to have
A
if not
lightning effect.
yeah, I mean, would certainly create the possibility for aging better.
Well, and I've said before that when the clutter is cleared out and it's rearranged in a way that feels more peaceful, people usually breathe a big sigh of relief and mention that they didn't realize how loud and chattery the clutter was in their head, how much mental energy they were putting to not listen to the noise that it
Right.
created.
Yeah.
And they feel relief from the lack of the noise. And so I think there's some, mental release that happens when you declutter a space.
M went on to say, my messes get worse after every cleanup. And Naomi completely anticipated my response. And she said, maybe it's not objectively worse, you're just more sensitized to noticing it.
Mm. It looks worse because you've been messing with it for so much.
Well, looks worse because now you've stopped unseeing it.
Yeah.
You've stopped overlooking it.
It's not in the background anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
And M said, I think that I am so happy with clear space that it encourages me to do a project and I don't have the discipline to clean up afterwards.
Oh, you do have to give yourself that, that little cleanup time later. And if you're too tired, then just make it a point that you circle back and clean up later that day or come back the next day and do the cleanup part that you didn't have the energy to complete.
Yeah. Okay, I think we better go on because we definitely need to get
Question
to the
two.
we definitely need to make it to the question that was the one
Okay.
we pitched to get everybody here. So
Yeah, yeah.
next question was from Saskatchewan Jane, who asked, how much of our home clutter tolerance or lack thereof is learned behavior? Is our clutter tolerance learned from our childhood home environments?
I think our clutter tolerance is a combination of a few things. We do learn about clutter tolerance and home maintenance from our childhood environments. Our parents teach us by example what living with clutter looks like. Some of us grow up with parents who teach us how to clean, how to deal with clutter on some level, but we can only learn from them what the parent is able to teach, and they can only show us what they know how to do themselves. So some of our parents don't have the capacity to transfer skills about organizing stuff or organizing tasks, and some do. That's just the luck of the draw where parents having and teaching skills is concerned. It would be great if all of our parents came installed with the software to teach us about cleaning and managing our environments, but they don't. That doesn't mean you can't learn it somewhere else, though. You might learn those skills as an adult when you're finally on your own and able to seek out training in these areas, and better late than never. But we also each have our own brains and our own organizational abilities. I've read stories about kids growing up with hoarders, and while some learn a high tolerance to chaos, others learn extreme aversion to clutter in response. They keep their own space in a hoarder's home extremely tidy, and as soon as they can move out, their own homes are extreme clean sites. Our own minds and personalities and mental skills affect how we deal with clutter. Some of us are born with innate organizing skills, and that means we do clutter management better than someone with less skills in that area. Someone who is neurotypical thinks more linearly and has good time awareness and can sequence tasks well. Someone who's more neurospicy has a harder time managing stuff and managing to-dos, even if they grew up in a pristine home, kept very tidy by a neurotypical parent. So, how your brain works affects your ability to understand and execute on organizing skills just as much as what your parent was able to model about organizing. So, I guess the short answer to the original question is that some of our clutter tolerance is learned behavior, both good and bad, and some is our own minds and what we bring to the table personally around organizing.
Yeah. Your sister is comparably organized, wouldn't you say? Or is she
Mm,
not quite so?
she's ADHD
Hmm.
for sure. But she is also very high energy and in motion all the time. And so she has no trouble throwing time and energy at a task, even if she has a hard time staying focused on something.
Yeah.
So she manages to keep her place in good shape. She still does her own cleaning and she has a lot of energy to throw at the task. And so she calls me occasionally and says, help me know how, I don't know how to organize my shoes. Can you help me? And I will work with her on it.
Yeah.
But she's perfectly able to do the work with instructions. And so, yeah, she can manage.
I'd love to hear more from our live audience about your own, your own experience. Deborah says, "My mom taught us to divide and conquer, split each task down to small portions. This was enormously helpful for my ADHD." Oh man,
Mm.
ADHD brain. I'm tongue-tied today.
Good training for your mom, though. So that's lucky. That's good that she was able to show you how to do it.
Yeah. May says, "Grandma saved everything from tin trays to cotton found in pill bottles."
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the collection of string that was labeled too small to use. Some people just collect stuff.
Ginger says, "My parents had a family of 8 children. Both of them came from large families. We did not have any clutter. Everything fit in its home. My mother frequently went through our things, and we had routines like pick up your toys, go wash your hands, and come to the table at supper time."
Cool. So she was modeling good behavior. She was modeling maintenance. And with that many people in the house, she needed to do that in order to keep control of her house. And so she had the skill set and she used it with y'all. And that's great. She was able to model great behavior.
Great point from Amanda, who says, "I feel like clutter is a relatively new problem in human history. Before mass
Absolutely.
production, very few people had excess. Once goods became easier to procure, that challenge must have grown exponentially. When I'm tempted to blame my home's condition on a lack of childhood decluttering training, I try to remember that this task has only been a major part of home maintenance for maybe 2 or 3 generations before me. It helps me be more kind in my thoughts about those who came before me."
Yeah, 100%.
It's true. I
Yeah.
mean, our ancestors, far more of our ancestors lived in conditions of extreme scarcity than any kind of abundance. And
Well,
so,
and certainly in low volume and maintaining low volume, inheriting things, furniture,
yeah,
they wore the same clothes far longer than we do. Like,
right,
yeah, we created a environment where anybody could buy goods all the time, and
right,
that's
right.
you're right. That's relatively
Yeah.
new.
Mhm. Connie says, "We moved so often in my childhood, things got disappeared very often."
That's the nature of moving, right? Like you have to
Yeah,
touch everything, and so you are forced to reevaluate whether it's worth dragging on to the next place. So people who moved often army, people that were in the military and they got moved every couple of years to someplace new. If you were part of an army family or a military family like that, where that was your lifestyle, yeah, you learned a lot of moving skills that other people just don't have that same experience of. You got training by necessity.
M says, "I think my years of living happily in very tight quarters influences my tolerance to having too much stuff around me."
Mm,
Yeah, when you were talking about the sort of nature versus nurture argument, I think I was thinking there's something too, I think, about our young adulthood and when we first assert our independence or actually get our independence, get
Mm-hmm.
our first places to live.
Right.
Um, there's stuff we have to learn no matter what our parents taught us. Do you still have to learn? No, don't get 10 of them because they're on sale. You have to work that out for yourself, you
There's
know?
no room for that, right?
Yeah. Jane says, my mom was a child of the Depression and modeled sharing with others when we no longer needed something.
Mm. That's a surprising, that's not usually the response that you hear about in these circles. Usually it's about, my mom was a child of the Depression and therefore she held on to everything. So
Right. Right.
it's much better that she modeled sharing and passing it on to somebody else that might need it when you were done with it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got the good modeling, the helpful modeling.
Jacqueline says, growing up, my house was very cluttered and cleaning happened when guests were coming over.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had to learn routine maintenance on my own once I had my own house.
There you go. Like your parents, they give you what they got, they do for you what they can, and then you grow up and you get to do it the way that you want to do it. So good for you.
Naomi says, I learned rather extreme frugality, and cleaning and tidying had a lot of emotional baggage attached. It
Mm,
wasn't just skills, but psychological retraining I needed to begin to deal with housework and organizing.
mm.
It seems to me like we've probably talked with as many people who said, I grew up in a house that was always a wreck, and so I made up my mind that I was not going to live that way,
Yeah,
as people who say, I grew up in a house that was a wreck. I mean, they don't say it in those terms, but my parents, my grandparents saved everything. My parents saved everything. I tend to save everything.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, we still get to decide which influences mean the most to us.
And what we have to listen to.
Yeah. Pat says, interesting thought about aging. My mom and aunt were twins. Mom had collections, she put that in quotation marks, of craft projects, as did my aunt, but my aunt was far more organized. So I didn't learn cleaning or organizing from my mom, but from my aunt.
There
Mom
you go.
mom passed away at 79 and my aunt passed away at 93. I partly attribute this to the difference between my dad, crafty and messy, and my uncle, organized.
But how cool that you had, because she had a close sister, you had another option to learn from.
Yeah.
And that and that's a perfect example of, we each have our own personalities in our own mind. Like we may be twins, they may have been twins, but they were working with different skill sets because they were different people.
Yeah. I think you also can't discount the effect of the influence of spouses and partners
Yes, yes, yes.
because especially if you meet and pair off with someone when you're young, you're going to be more inclined to try very hard to adapt to that person's ways of doing things, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Right.
than coming at it like if you meet someone and partner for the first time when you're 40, you're going to have all your own routines and rituals are going to be pretty well
Things are more set.
established.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to probably, if you are a very organized person and you try to pair off with a slob, it's just not going to work if you do it later.
Well, it's much, yeah, it's much harder.
A much harder accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one more and then we need to move on.
Okay.
CJ says the opposite effect was the stress of constantly moving, never letting us settle and get rooted enough to organize for every new space. So our family's clutter just kept getting jumbled and worse.
Oh, because it was hard for you to get set up in the new place
Yeah,
because it felt like it was so temporary all the time.
yeah, well, she goes on to say, when the
Mm.
stress of packing so much just resulted in throw everything randomly in a box, doom boxes just kept multiplying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that. It's a lot to ask a kid to move that often and to be in motion that much and not feel settled, and for somebody who is more of a homebody, that disruption could be more damaging and hard to manage than somebody who's more comfortable in motion. I think of my little sister as She really likes to travel a lot. She's always like tapping her toes going, when's the next trip? Like she wants to be traveling all the time. And I find that much traveling disruptive and I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I like to travel, but I don't like to travel continuously. And so we all have, I miss my house, I miss the cats, I miss the routine. And so we all have our own levels of tolerance for stuff. And if moving was disruptive for you instead of, if you didn't adapt well to that and you didn't develop routines around that, the longer that went on, if it was more disruptive, the longer it went on, the worse it got. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I hope you're out of that cycle now. Let's just say that.
Um, I'm going to share one more before we go on. Sue says, my mom also kept our house of 8 people without clutter and role modeled no procrastinating, but I did not inherit her ease, efficiency, and excellent decision making. And her work life was much more demanding than my own. And her hobbies and pastimes required no supplies.
There you go.
So yeah, that can make a big difference.
So she had good skills around these areas, and I'm sure she had, deficits in other areas. So
Right.
we all
Yeah.
have our own skill sets, right? And lucky for you, she had in an 8-person household, she had skill sets to manage and keep the house functioning for the 8 people that were living there, and that's wonderful.
Okay. Many, many great comments, but we got to move on.
Okay.
Teresa asked us to talk about breaking down a deceased loved one's craft room. This is a topic we've talked about kind of tangentially on many occasions, and I know that it's something Gail has discussed at length with her beading friends. So, Gail, I have a hunch you have a few things to say on this topic.
I certainly do have things to say about it. My beauty friends have all said that we each need to go to our homes when we're gone, when somebody has passed away, and clear out the craft rooms before the spouse throws it all away without realizing the money sunk into the collection. My friends have told their spouses, just call my friends and they'll come take care of it. And here's why we're saying this. Any craft room worth its salt is many years in the making, thousands of dollars buried in the purchase of craft supplies. Whatever your favorite craft, it is not cheap to play and worth it to another artist to have access to those supplies. So it's a good idea to get help undoing a craft room, especially from someone who knows the types of crafts that are contained in the room. That person can separate important stuff from the not so important stuff, and they can see the valuables versus the cheap supplies. It's good to tap into that crafts community in order to have an interested audience if the contents are going to be sold. Putting stuff from a craft room into an estate sale is doable, and every crafter has wandered through an estate sale and found the craft room and like gone searching for the supplies that they're going to get super cheap for fun. But the purchase audience is going to be really hit and miss. And you can raise better funds by selling directly to the audience of interested buyers. So to do that, you need to find the crafts community. Find the local craft store that sells the supplies and see if they know of a group or a community doing the craft. There'll be quilters and stampers and beaders out there getting together to have fun. If you can tap into a few groups like that, you can find a way to sell or donate to those groups. Online selling is always an option. There's so many crafty related social media groups, and some of them allow selling on their sites. You can sell on the usual markets like Facebook Marketplace and Etsy and the like. If you want to resell it all, you can find a place to do it. It just requires the time commitment to do the actual selling. If you're not worried about raising money from the sale of the craft stuff, then you can donate to a few places that will use the supplies. Depending on the type of crafts, a high school art teacher might want the supplies, or a local theater program, or a summer camp that provides arts and crafts during the camp. You can donate to a local creative reuse center, like we have Texas Art Asylum here in Houston. These exist all over the country, and you may have one in your area. Then artists come and shop the store looking for those supplies. There are all kinds of charitable programs and projects doing good works that might use some of the supplies, like yarn that you can give to a group that's knitting prayer shawls for hospital patients. Just do a little research on what supplies you have are being used in a charitable program, and you can make donation to their cause. Just remember that no one will want to receive a huge crafty mess as a donation. So some effort to organize the craft supplies before donating is a good idea. An organizer can help with that part of the process and might also have resources on how to dispose of your particular craft supply. But I will reiterate here, any craft room that has been in existence for more than a year is full of a lot of stuff that can be used by somebody that is into that craft, and you just have to link up with those people. So making a little bit of effort, if you take it all to Goodwill, the majority of it's going to end up in the trash, I think. If you take it to if you let it go off the front curb, if you do urban recycling, it's probably not going to get used. But it's worth it to put those supplies in the hands of somebody else who either can only afford them because they're cheap or can not afford them at all, and you need to donate them. And so it's worth the effort to try to rehouse those craft supplies to somebody that's into the craft.
Connie says a woman in the local parish died a few months ago, and suddenly the bizarre people, Bazaar, not Bizarre, bizarre people are facing oodles of textile material to deal with.
Mm.
A message was sent out, and a local design school took it all.
Oh, see, that's a great idea. Yeah. Like I said, there's always another artist that needs those supplies, and every craft room is uniquely its own unique curated selection, right?
Right,
Like
right.
it's a random stuff that got bought over this decade of time period, and half the stuff in the room can't be bought again. And it's all what they were focused on and interested in, and so it's its own little specialty curated collection. And those are fascinating to other artists to look through and pull out the stuff that they think is cool. And so if you have the time and energy, or if you are willing to pay for somebody to do it, it's worth it to unpack it and let somebody that is interested in it get access to the supplies. I'm lucky here because we do the Texas Beaters Retreat every year, and we do a white elephant there. That anytime there's a large collection that I run across in my work, I can take all that kind of beady related stuff to that group. And then once a year, I'm in a room with 100 women who are all into beading. And so then they sort of swarm like locusts all over the white elephant stuff, and it all goes to somebody else's house. And so it's a great way for me. It's locally, I have that access related to beads. And we've also seen people pass away, and we've sold on their behalf. We've sold to the group the contents of their beady craft room, and been able to give the family money instead. Like, okay, we sold all this stuff, and here's the money that you got out of it. We just did it as a favor to the family, and it's worth it. It's worth it to make the effort. That's what I'm saying. You won't get wildly rich on it, but you can get some money if you can connect with a community that does the craft like the person did,
Right.
and the stuff can be rehoused.
I suppose the difficulty of disposing of the stuff, and, I mean, disposing in the broader sense of
Mm,
finding good homes for it or
right, right,
trashing it
right,
as
right.
appropriate. The difficulty is probably kind of in proportion to how small the niche of the craft is.
Mm, mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
like if you're a knitter and you have a million skeins of yarn
mm.
and piles of knitting needles, that stuff is not going to be hard to find a new home for.
Right, right, right. 100%. That's
But
a very easy craft.
if you are using, well, I remember you had a client who made their own glass beads,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Involving fire and uh,
yes.
danger and
Torch and
torches and masks and all of that.
goggles and
Yeah,
yeah. It's a little bit harder, but even so, like that's just it's just a craft that, and and the truth is that some of the flies supplies cross over. Like they were using
Oh,
a
right, sure.
torch that would work for glass, but it would also have worked for metal or so
Hmm.
some of the tools would have crossed over to a few other
Creme
crafts.
brulee.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, so there, some of it is would swim around in a couple of seas,
Right.
and you just have to figure out, which ones.
M says, how about a list of names and addresses of fellow crafters posted in the supply cabinet for the survivor to contact? That is
Oh,
a great
yeah.
idea. And in fact,
Mm-hmm.
as we've been talking about this, I had the idea that an alternative tittle for this week for anyone in of the artistic or crafty disposition would be
Anybody that has that craft room right
start
now,
working on your crafter's last will and testament. You
right?
know, a page of instructions for your survivor on what you would like to do with all this stuff after you're gone, if you have
Well, and
any special
truthfully,
wishes.
you know better than anybody what
Right,
groups are available, what contacts can be made, what community efforts are happening out there. And so you can point them straight to the right group to call, the right website to look up. You see what I'm saying? Like
right,
you
or
can
right,
totally pull the resources that you know in your head and write them down for the person that's got to handle it for you after the fact.
yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
let's see. Ginger said, I've made my own glass beads. I'd love to get back to it. It's a fun
Oh,
challenge. Have you ever
yeah.
done that?
I have not done that. The combination of fire and getting burnt and yeah, and no,
Yeah.
that was like if I try to do that, I'm gonna be the one that's injured all the time. Like I just knew that was beyond my capacity to do safely, and so I'm happy to let other people do it, and I'll admire it and pay for it, but. I'm not the one that needs to be playing with fire and tools. That's just not it.
Uh, Naomi says, I have already designated a book executor.
Oh, there you go. Good job. Somebody that's willing and able to do it. That's awesome.
And I think your executor should be someone who's at least moderately interested in the thing you're giving them responsibility for,
Right, right. And a
obviously.
little younger than you.
Let's see what else. Ginger added, my husband created a studio for me off the garage for my messy work, metal and lamp work.
Yay, that's good. Yeah, because that stuff has lots of, there's fumes involved sometimes, and there's fire risk, and yeah, like there's things explode if they don't do it correctly. The glass shatters. If there's there's all kinds of things flying and stuff going around. You don't need that inside your house. That's absolutely true.
Okay, I think we have time for one more bonus topic.
Okay,
Um, I know you like this one.
I do.
Nina said, I know Ed is an avid cook, as am I. I'm wondering if and how he has parted with things in his kitchen cabinets. I have 10 shelves of cookbooks,
Oh my gosh.
but I read them like novels. I get that. She goes on to say, I have so many specialty cake pans and realize I'm not using them all the time. Maybe I will use one a week, and if it doesn't thrill me, I'll donate it. How many pumpkin-shaped baking pans does a person need? LOL.
Okay, Ed, what do you have to say? What's your advice?
Well, yeah,
You
I
want to put
think.
yourself on camera
Oh, I guess I can do that. I'll
since you're going to
unspotlight
talk?
you. Yeah.
There you go.
I guess I would say yeah, one pumpkin shaped baking pan seems like it's probably enough. So we'll start with that question. That was the easy one. I do like the idea of using the specialty cake pans to eliminate them, but the one thing I would suggest is do a quick keep toss pass before you do that. There
Mm.
will be some that you pull out and go, I am never doing this again. This one didn't work. The not I don't like the coating. Um, it it always, things always burn in this pan. If you have anything that just doesn't work, get rid of that first before you start any more complicated plan. I do worry about, I mean, you've probably heard people say, I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna try it, I'm gonna work my way through all of these. And the danger of that is you're committing yourself to keeping all that stuff long enough to do all of that, you
Right.
know?
And it doesn't, and the effort that you have to expend to do that doesn't match how much effort you want to spend. And
Right.
so I think, the point that you're making about the pumpkin is if you pre-sort, we're just using the baking pans, especially baking pans as an example. If you pre-sort all those pans, then you realize that you have a 7 pumpkin shaped baking pans, and you can look at the 7 and go, okay, of all of these that I bought at different times, this is the one that I like the shape of the most. And you can keep one, and 6 can go out immediately. And then you can, have the pumpkin baking pan and know that you don't have to bake with it because you picked the one that you like the best.
Right.
I think the other part of the question though is how have you gone about parting things in your cabinets? And I will say one thing about the cookbooks. People always put cookbooks in the very limited kitchen cabinetry space in the
Right.
kitchen,
Yeah.
and they use up those cabinets for cookbooks when they really need them for other stuff. And so I would think of the cookbooks as books first
Right.
and go park them somewhere else in the house. They don't have to live in the kitchen. Keep in the kitchen the ones that you use the most often, or the ones that you're currently using, or whatever. But I would not keep more than 5 or 10 in the kitchen itself. If you have a big collection, it needs to be on a bookshelf somewhere else.
I agree. I agree. I don't keep any of the cookbooks in the kitchen, even now that we have a much bigger, more useful kitchen,
Mm.
because I tend to even somebody here got me started using the Paprika app to organize recipes.
Oh
And
yeah.
so now when I find a recipe in one of my cookbooks that I that is a real go-to for me, I take a moment to enter it into Paprika. Or what I do first actually is see if I can find it online, because then Paprika can just import it.
Mm.
And then if I can't find it online, I'll just type it up in Paprika myself. And then the phone is the only thing in the kitchen with me. I read the recipes off the phone. Um, because, books, you don't really want to expose the books to all the liquids in the kitchen, and the the you know the dangers of the stove. It's really better if your cookbooks are with books, like you said. Oh yeah, JB says it seems that cookbooks stored in the kitchen would take on the odors of the foods.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
seems
Absorb the
probable.
oil and the air, absorb there's always steam and steam carrying residue up into the house, into the kitchen wall. So good to keep them out of that process, part of the process. So do you have a thought about things that you parted with in the kitchen? How you go about that process?
Um, One is I'm really fussy about finishes, and so like non-stick, like I don't have any of the old style plastic non-stick things. Anything that has a chipped surface goes right out. What
So
else? I mean,
integrity
yeah,
in the surface is important to you,
yeah. And
and
then,
that's how you filter.
we had a whole lot of stuff in storage before our last move because we were living in a tiny little house and the kitchen was a postage stamp. And now we have a big kitchen and generous storage. I'm still not going to say it's a spectacular amount of storage, um, but the pantry is the only part that isn't really big enough. But we did pull everything out when we after the move. We took everything out, and sort of started from the assumption that everything had to earn its place. And so just we started with put away the things that we use all the time in the most accessible locations. We moved all of the decorative serving pieces and stuff like that, which I
Those
consider,
always take up way too much cabinet space than
yeah,
they should.
those are almost all.
Mhm.
We took almost all of those out of the kitchen because you don't
Mm.
you don't use them that often. We only bust those out for entertaining and such.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, Ginger says, I've been holding on to a set of 3 springform pans. I had lofty ideas of making cheesecakes. I made one in 2007.
I think, Miss Ginger, your cheesecake days are over and you need to send those on down the road. If you suddenly get a hankering for cheesecake, you can go find cheesecake out in the world. You do not have to do it. If you have proven to yourself that it is not interesting enough to you to make it happen, then there's no point in staying supplied for it. And
Now,
if you suddenly want to, suddenly want to do it, you can call one of your friends and say, "Hey, do you have a cheesecake pan?" Like,
right, do you have a springform pan? Um, springform pans are great, and you can also use them to make deep dish pizza. And you can also use them to make, what else have I done? Oh,
don't help her keep them.
for your birthday, I made remember the orange upside down cake? That
Yes.
was a
Oh,
springform pan.
yes, that was lovely.
Okay, we have run ourselves right out of time. So
Okay, cool.
let's talk about the coming weeks. We will be back next week at the usual time on Tuesday, February 24th, to talk about organizing your tax paperwork. I know this doesn't apply to everyone in all of the places where people watch us, but it's this one will be, mostly geared toward the United States, but I hope we'll have some useful things to say to everyone else as well. Um, March 3rd, we don't have our topic settled yet, but it's going to be about a major life change of one kind or another. And then a reminder that March 10th is our next book club episode. We're talking about New Order, a decluttering handbook for creative folks and everyone else by Fay Wolf.
Get to
Um,
reading. It's time to be reading your book.
Gail, why don't you give us the tittle?
Okay, this week's weekly tittle. Do you know where your tax paperwork is? This week's assignment is to spend a few minutes making sure that you're prepared for the advice that we're going to give you next week about organizing paperwork in anticipation of preparing your taxes. So, if you know exactly where all the paperwork is that you'll need to prepare your tax returns, congratulations to you. There's no tittle assignment for you this week. If you don't know where your paperwork is, or if you're unclear about whether you have everything that you need, set aside time this week to gather the documents that you'll need to prepare and file your taxes. The deadline for sending out 1099 documents and other notifications has come and gone. And so we're in the middle of February, and so you should have most of those documents, or you should have an email explaining why you don't have the document yet. So I would go through the process of seeing if you've gotten everything from everybody you expect something from. A lot of that stuff is now, they send you an email and say you have to go to a link and pull it down from an online account. So go and take the time to go find those things, interact with those websites, pull out everything and print everything out that you need to work with, and make sure that's there. And then we'll talk about organizing it, managing that paperwork next week.
Okay, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook,
Facebook.
or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from our audience, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We're so happy to see you as always. And we will be back next week talking about the dreaded tax paperwork. See you later. Bye.
Bye.